Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 2020 COVID summer sod laying project. So we had a whole bunch of projects going on in our backyard this summer. We had a fire pit that we poured new concrete for. We had a back patio that we created after taking the old one out. And we had a whole bunch of areas around the yard that we had torn up. We fixed a pipe. We laid some propane tanks down so that by having purchased tanks, we could save money on our LP by doing summer fill. And we had to do a whole bunch of regrading and bring different areas up and down. And that meant we were going to be tearing up all the dirt. So we're going to go through all the different phases that we went through this summer to get all of our backyard up and running and ready and nice and good to go. So first of all, when we had to go through each section, we basically had to level it all off with a machine. Used a 3-point spring tooth. You also used a drag. I also used a tiller to break up some chunks. We had to pick up stones, try to get every section ready for the sod. Then when it's time for the sod laying, go get yourself a sod cutter. We found some good sections of grass throughout the yard that we were going to end up moving around and making things work in different phases. So we start cutting the sod 18 inches wide. We got some fancy driving, getting things ready. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take those sections of sod, we're going to cut them into about 5-foot lengths, roll them up, and then we could fit in the tractor, we could fit 3 rolls of sod, and then in the skid steer we could fit 6. You're basically just going to pick them up from one area of the yard and set them down in another. And then the area that we pick the sod off of, then eventually that would be dug up in the next phase of the project, and you just keep taking from one place and moving to another. So you get an area like there next to the fire pit where that whole area was up probably 8 inches from where it was when we started in the spring. And so we got that all leveled off and we got that going. Up around the patio was the next phase. So we had to bring a bunch of areas up again because things had settled. We had to add about a foot on, I would say maybe 8 inches around the back area. We get that all leveled off. And the next phase of the sod laying was just going to be up near the house. We're going to go maybe from the patio out about 6 feet, and then that will eventually take care of that center section coming up here. So we get a whole bunch of help. We get multiple machines helping out here, try to get that all laid out. Lots of help along the way. Hot days. We're in the early part of the summer, so we're dealing with bugs, we're dealing with heat. But that area up around the house really turned out nicely. Get some water on that and get that new sod rooted in nice. If you take a look at the old before the sod, you can see with all those slopes, if I was just really nervous about planting new grass there, because if you get one heavy rain and it starts washing out, basically you're going to be taking all that dirt from the higher area. It's just going to wash down, and instead of having the slope you want, it's going to be the slope it wants. And so that's why I really like the idea of moving the sod around. Plus, if you let the dog out on a rainy day, you hate to have it come back in with dirty paws. So I like the idea of moving the sod around, and you can see after it's finished, I mean, it just blends right in. You know, we're talking about having that whole area all ripped up, and now it looks like that. So the next phase was going to be the biggest and most challenging phase. You can kind of see off to the right, that whole area is really low. The areas had settled, and the area by the house was really high. So like in that view there with the tractor, the front tires of the tractor are probably only 20 feet off of the patio, but they're about 2 to 3 feet lower than what the rest of the grade is. So that whole section over there all had to get brought up. I came up with some ideas on moving some tree stumps, getting them out of there. I had a high area in a different section of our land, so I pushed that topsoil off, and we dug out approximately 12 dump truck loads worth of fill. We dug out from a higher area on the corner of the land, and we just loaded it up onto a dump trailer. So we had a little dump insert that we set on top of another trailer, and between a skid steer and a compact tractor, we loaded up over 40 loads and could just move that across the yard and dump that out. It was really neat. I mean, it took a long time, a lot of material to move, but boy, with at $200 a load and 10 to 12 loads, we saved ourselves a good amount of money by moving all this material ourselves versus hiring a professional. So you can see how low the skid steer is in that view right there. You're looking at 2 to 3 feet worth of fill that we had to bring in and just level it all off essentially. And then you brought the topsoil back up on top. So scrape the topsoil off, bring in the fill, level that off, and then you had to put the topsoil on top so you're not laying sod on top of clay. Then it came time to get rolling on the entire final phase of the project. So I figured out the square footage. It was well over 10,000 square feet of sod. This is what 10,000 feet of sod looks like rolled up in the backyard. It's quite an intimidating view to look at all of that sod that had to be moved over to a different section of the yard. But with a lot of work, we got it done. It did rain on one of the days that we were trying to lay this sod, so we ended up having to alter plans, and we ended up driving up onto planks so that we didn't sink in and get stuck. Super hot, ton of work. You talk about will to do good things here. I mean, it was hot, sweaty, dirty, full of dirt. On the days where it rained, the bugs like to come up to the surface. Who knows what this individual was allergic to, but his eye all swelled up that day, probably just from having something on his hand from the bugs, and then having an allergic reaction there. One good way to get rid of the gnats was to have dryer sheets in the hat, as one daughter is demonstrating. Even the puppy was tired just watching all of us work out there. So we got through that day. We got about 2/3 of that final phase finished, and then we start getting to the end, and we can smell victory here. Lots of smiles down the final phase. On the really hot days, we'd get going in the morning. We'd work from 5 in the morning until 9, and then go in the house during the real hot, muggy days, and then maybe come back out at 5 o'clock when you can actually do it. When you're dealing with heat and all that physical labor, you just can't do it. So you got to be smarter with that. So I really love how all this turned out. This was so much work. It was such a team effort. You look at how all of that looks. This is just a few months later. This is, I think, a September picture. We took the area where all the sod came from, and we planted the grass back up. And then all the areas around the house are completely mature and good and ready to roll for growing and going through winter and thriving next summer. So hope you enjoyed our sod video. We are thrilled that it is complete, and thanks for watching.